Big breaking news coming out. Oh boy, the Hunter Biden laptop leak is officially now entering into the stage where the news media are all backing up and having to acknowledge that they screwed up. We're now seeing a backlash form as investigative procedures are hitting. Even George Stephanopoulos is starting to ask questions about $4.1 million of money that was given to the Biden family in China. When Stephanopoulos goes there, then you know there's some deep politics going on in the news arena. The big story is what Elon Musk is doing. He reminds me of Donald Trump when he began to join the side of the deplorables. Elon Musk is even more potent than anyone else because he's a climate guy and he's a Tesla, Neuralink into the head. He's talking about the future of science and man. And now he comes around and says, look, this ESG social credit score system that is being imposed on banks and corporate America is like the devil himself. It's demonic. Now, Elon's coming out and taking a major share of Twitter to bring reformation to social media. We have Hungary had just had its massive election, and the vilified George Soros' enemy, Viktor Orban, won by a landslide, telling you faith and conservative values are strong and about to have a punchback on authoritarian elites. This is great news. You don't want to miss this broadcast. And listen, Hunter's got problems that probably are going to take down the Biden administration and remove Joe Biden from office. But if he had known about ExpressVPN, he probably could have mitigated a lot of his damages. ExpressVPN is the technology that protects your information, and it protects your identity, and it protects your classified documents. Check this out, because the government is getting more and more invasive into your private life every day. ExpressVPN.com/Lance. Just look into it. You need to get digitally updated on how to protect yourself. ExpressVPN.com/Lance. I believe there's 3 months free to try this out. You got to do this. 90 days free. Check it out. Go there /Lance. I'll see you on the other side in a moment. And welcome all of you out there into the podcast land. We believe that we're breaking the barriers now of 500,000 a month, I believe, and that's because of you. Although you have to show me, Mercedes, how to actually track these numbers. You're always giving me these numbers, and I want to see them for myself. But I know that you're not lying to me, because you're supposed to be the fake news filter over there that keeps me on the straight and narrow.
Yes.
But we thank you, 500,000 of you that are out there. And those of you that are going to be joining us in the future, please like and share and subscribe on whatever platform you're watching on right now. Give us your comments if comments are accessible. And I want to start with good news, because I'm tired of the bad news. I'm fed up with the negative, gloomy news. Everything Biden said was wrong. Do you remember him talking about the winter was going to be this is a sign. Everything he touches, it's like a reverse Midas touch. Everything he says actually goes in the opposite direction, too. He said it's going to be a dark winter, a gloomy, dark winter, a dystopian winter. We better break. And what happens? The Omicron variant breaks out, and it becomes the breakout winter. The masks are coming off, and we start to turn a corner. And then, so this is just the craziest thing, because I was working on a broadcast earlier today with the Middle East, and I do a Jerusalem desk newscast. And I talked to a guy in Jerusalem, and Barry Siegel, on a thing we call Prophetic Convergence, is what the show is called. And we were talking about the irony that everything that they tried to do to Trump is now coming like a great cosmic boomerang, circling around, and like the curse causeless shall not come. And that's one biblical principle. The other one is that woe unto him that digs a pit for somebody else, because you're going to fall into it yourself. And I realized that the Hunter Biden laptop, which was the Ukraine call issue, that Donald Trump was, the impeachment was over, that it's coming around now that the Hunter Biden laptop is becoming the issue that's going to expose Ukrainian corruption in the Biden family and in all likelihood lead to an impeachment of Biden if he's still around when that comes up. And that they had a Mueller investigation about Russia for 2 years. And I think the irony is it's going to be a Darrell Issa investigation that's going to drive us into this whole exposure of the laptop scenario and the business dealings of the Biden family crime syndicate in China and in Ukraine. This is going to be the great boomerang. So where we are now is that we have the New York Times having to reluctantly acknowledge the fact that, yeah, okay, the laptop is legitimate, but it doesn't stop there. Because the other legacy news medias are all going to have to do this confession because they're going to have to deal with the fact that they all suppressed the story. Now, when it gets to what the White House is saying, it's worth looking at what they're saying because they're artful dodgers at how they say stuff. And so the quote that we're getting from the chief of staff there, Stephanopoulos, is interviewing staff chief, which we don't recognize his names. We don't talk about him enough. It's Ron Klain. Now, listen to what he says. Ron Klain, suppose they know that Biden's goose is cooked on this laptop, along with the 50 intelligence people whose names should be public with their faces, who signed off and said before the debate, no, it's potentially Russia information. You only have to open it to know it's not Russia information. My point is, we got the intelligence community covering up the Biden crime. So it's coming out. It's all coming out. So the president's confident, Klain says, listen to the language. The president is confident that his family did the right thing. But again, I just want to really be clear that these are actions by Hunter and his brother. These are private matters. Two pivots are in that sentence, artfully crafted. One, well, as far as I know, the president thinks he didn't do anything, which is like, I'm distancing myself from this. He's not saying the allegation is absurd. He's saying, well, the president doesn't think anything happened. He's saying, it's up to the president what he thinks. Secondly, these actions really, maybe we could kind of like not go there because this is about a private thing with his son and his business. Nothing to do with the president. Well, if they don't involve the president, then these kinds of questions are going to continually come up and embarrass them, such as Stephanopoulos, who actually asked the question. Well, we have information now that seems to be coming up about China and the fact that there's some like $4 million of transaction involving China. And here's what it is. The Chinese energy conglomerate paid Hunter Biden and the president's brother, James, $4.8 million over a 14-month period. Do you have any news on that? Once again, the quote is, the president says that there's nothing to look at here. As far as he knows, he has no dealings with this whatsoever. So there you have it. Joe Biden is confident that Hunter didn't break any laws dealing with Ukraine. And we're going to now find out. It's going to take time. All the news is breaking now, but the reality is it's going to be till probably, hate to pace you on this, it's going to be after midterms. And around January, you're going to start to see breaking news on this. But in the meantime, it's a slow boil. Anything to add to that, Mercedes, on the Hunter Biden laptop?
No, I just think that I like when you make those predictions, so we shall see what happens. But I want to let you know. My friend, it's far more than 500,000 people listening to the podcast. Downloads. That's just downloads on podcast platforms. You know where we're at? You want to take a guess?
Can't tell.
You don't want to guess?
I don't know.
Okay, I will just tell you. So 716,000 downloads last month.
716,000 downloads.
Yeah, you're adding. Let me tell you, like, you'll be encouraged by this because sometimes you don't necessarily have that same like hurrah belief in myself. It's like the imposter syndrome starts to creep in.
Well,
but listen,
it's just
you're 66 in all of news on Apple. So like out of 200,
66.
You're 66.
Which
That's
is
a lot.
Either the beast or it's a number of books of the Bible.
Yeah, but you're beating a lot of people. But you know what really helps us, guys, as I'm saying this? Please go review the podcast, share the podcast from the podcast apps, and just make sure you keep listening. But we're almost adding 100,000 people a month. I mean,
and you know why that is, ladies and gentlemen? I'll tell you why it is. Because so far, we have not been canceled. Well, we have 2 strikes against us on YouTube, and TikTok did cancel me last week. TikTok, I finally reached celebrity status on TikTok, and they knocked me out. For what?
Well, we set you up 2 new accounts. So this is quite common on the old TikTok because 1% of it's owned by the CCP.
So the Communist Party knocked me out. Maybe something I said about the Communist Party?
Could be. Something you said about China, Red Dragon, props. Could be anything like that. Anyways.
I would like to add something right now.
Okay.
Elon Musk, the Tony Stark of our generation, the guy who's climate change, wants to put a Neuralink into your brain, kind of transhumanist. He's got kind of like let's say he's the nobler idealist on this stuff, but he's a clear-eyed capitalist. And what happened was he got mad at Twitter because he developed a friendship with the Babylon Bee guys. Now listen, I know, Mercedes, you're not connecting the dots in the same prescient prophetic manner that I do all the time, but this is for real. Elon does an interview with Babylon Bee. He doesn't do a lot, but we were happy to see that because Babylon Bee is a kind of irreverent, kind of a self-critical eye at religiousness in the Christian community. And increasingly, religiousness in politics where the left are flipping crazy and they're fanatical. And so it pokes fun at stuff. And Elon was kind of liking the Babylon Bee. He does an interview with him. And shortly after the interview, they get canceled with, a couple of million followers on Babylon Bee.
Sure.
This did not escape Elon's observation. So what does he do? He proceeds to start to criticize the undemocratic use of the Twitter platform. And then he goes on to buy 9.2% of the stock, which makes him the largest stock owner. But that's not it. If he was just some kind of rich billionaire conservative, it would be like, oh, he's got 80 million followers. He is a formidable adversary to their persecution of conservative worldviews. So guess what they just did today? The Twitter CEO, Parag Agrawal, announced that they're appointing tech billionaire Elon Musk to the company's board of directors. So Elon Musk's now on the board of directors with Twitter. And and they say, well, he's a passionate believer and intense critic of the service. It's exactly what we need on Twitter. And Elon says his own response is, and I love the response because it's still a shot over the bow. I'm looking forward to working with Parag and Twitter board to make significant improvements to Twitter in the coming months. I love it. Significant improvements in the coming months. Starting with the editing feature. He already did a survey. If you were on Twitter last night, I took his survey. And it says, aren't you tired of the fact that when you post something on Twitter, let's say you spell something wrong, which is particularly frustrating for comedians because it kills a joke if you got a word wrong. And you can't go back like in Facebook. You can go back and edit it and fix it. So there's no edit characteristic. He said, how many want to see that change? Well, that's one of the first changes they're going to do. And that's what we need. We need to see people get involved. So, but here's an interesting comment from Tom Fitton, who is, is the Judicial Watch, very powerful and very important organization. You guys all need to support it. It's the one that would get the laptop and issues like that to the surface, where you got these things that are hidden and swept under the carpet by Freedom of Information Act, FOIA. The Judicial Watch exposes stuff. So anyway, Elon Musk, as a member of Twitter's board of directors, Tom Fitton says, should demand a full investigation of Twitter's illicit and fraudulent censorship policies. The evidence shows that Twitter has lied to shareholders, lied to Congress, lied to users, and to the public about its censorship targeting of conservatives. Now, this is one of those things that everybody knows but is denied. That if you're a conservative, you're going to get targeted and taken off of Twitter faster than if you're a loudmouth leftist blathering on about this and that, including the big complaint is, even Middle East, Iranian rants and ISIS type posts are allowed on there, but there are posts taken down by conservatives that are far less incendiary. So basically, I don't know that Tom Fitton's advice will be followed up on, but imagine, if you will, this scenario. Elon Musk wants to make changes. He is resistant on the changes. He runs into the ideologues at the board of directors, which are kind of like the woke millennial faculty lounge at a university. And Elon is a free market capitalist dreamer, Tony Stark. And he's looking at them, and he's going to have some head-ons with them. And he's going to be pushing back. They're going to push back. Suppose he was to plan on buying out Twitter, but he doesn't want to let people know he's doing that because people will invest in the company and the stock prices will go up. Now, I'm just playing a scenario here, people. But suppose that he decides that he wants to redeem Twitter, but if he lets it out on the street that he's going to buy it, the share values will go up and it's going to cost him more to buy the company. So he starts tweeting about what he's not happy about with Twitter and why he wants more of an open, transparent investigation into their policies, making it clear so that people aren't going to be, he's thinking of Babylon Bee, guys like that. He wants to know what the decision-making matrix is and how do they go about doing this equitably. And suppose this starts to generate interest, but he starts to act like he's going to bail on Twitter. And he's basically going to go do something else because they need competition for democracy to work. There needs to be another voice out there. And so the price starts to go down. And he drives the price down and then does a takeover. Interesting.
What would you buy, though, of the largest stake in Twitter, drive the price down, and then buy more?
That would be in order to acquire the company. To acquire the company at the best price.
You think he wants to buy a 51% stake in Twitter?
I think he wants to change it.
I think he wants to. I will say this. Elon is notorious for, I'm not going to call it pump and dumps, but a pump and dump where he promotes like a crypto like Shiba Inu, or he promotes Dogecoin when it's really low. He buys a lot. Then he kind of promotes it on Twitter. And then people go crazy and buy it. And then he'll sell like half or 25% of his holdings and recoup whatever he did there, whatever he made or invested.
Oh,
so
he might drive it up and then exit out of Twitter.
That's what I'm saying. It's already really low. It's already taken a beating. I mean, most conservatives aren't even on the platform.
I think it just went up like $8 a share or something.
Exactly. So it's like the minute he buys it, like what you're saying, everybody starts investing in it. He might make some changes, but I would think he's going to exit a chunk of that position and recoup some of his money back. He basically does that.
So all right, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that were looking for him to be the savior of social media, he might just be trying to reform it a little bit, drive the price up a little bit, and then sell out half of his shares and make his money back.
Yeah, I think he's going to look to get his investment back, and so that's what I would do. I would put money into it. I mean, he did the same thing with Bitcoin. He started. He bought Bitcoin. And then Tesla started accepting payments in Bitcoin. They bought a large stake in Bitcoin. So like he does this. He makes huge investments, recoups a good chunk of that investment, and then you let the rest ride.
Well, there you go, people. This is the other side of the omelet.
But I think it's both, Lance. I think it's like two birds with one stone type of guy. He's so brilliant. I mean, he really, truly is brilliant. I know, I don't think he's a Christian, so he has a little bit of a different worldview, but a brilliant mind.
Now, there's somebody to pray for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're going to pray for the Bible talks about pray for rulers and for those who are in authority, that we may lead a godly and peaceable life. That's King James. This is a guy who is those that are in authority. He's got authority as influence. And kings are decision makers, and influencers are the power behind the throne. So guys like him are people you want to keep an eye on. You want to really pray for him because there's something about him, like Donald Trump. Donald Trump came onto the scene. He didn't come onto the scene as an evangelical. He came onto the scene as an Elon Musk, who had values, God had put into him something that he wanted to preserve and fight for and was willing to do it. But Elon Musk had a rather busy week, Mercedes, because it wasn't just at Twitterland. He's also increasingly convinced that corporate environmental, social, and governance scores are the devil incarnate, he calls it. He's even using apocalyptic Pentecostal language. He's saying they are the devil incarnate. Now, Glenn Beck, I've heard about Glenn Beck talking about this for a while, and it's unfortunate. Glenn has a big successful platform and a big studio. I shouldn't feel too sorry for him. But I mean, he goes on, the poor guy has to do a year sounding the alarm, running around like Chicken Little out there, and suddenly we do discover the sky's falling. And so, Glenn Beck, you were talking to me about this for a long time. He's talking about the digital currency coming, and it's going to be a digital score, and they're going to give you, like, if the radical equity people succeed, then reparations is going to come to the African American community. It'll be very complicated to figure out what percentage African American you got to be, but you're going to get your digital dollar at $1.20 value, and if you're a privileged white person, you're going to get it 80 cents in a dollar. And it's going to be, this is where the equity is going to, I mean, it's just, he's warned about this, the Chinese social credit score system. I don't recommend Black Mirror. Carl, I'm going to bring you guys in here because you're my controversial current cultural affairs correspondents. But Black Mirror is very dark, but I did see one episode.
Okay.
I want to know if you guys saw this episode. Actually, you had me see it, Mercedes. And it's an episode where this girl, look at Jonathan, nervously looking at you, wondering if the boss is going out on a limb. I caught that glance at Mercedes, that worried look that maybe I'm going too far, and you guys are on edge. You don't know where I'm going right now. All right, here's what I want to say. The Black Mirror episode is about the social credit score. I was talking about the Chinese social credit score system. And I couldn't understand it. Then Mercedes said, watch this episode. And it's about a girl who's getting ready for a wedding. And she's going to be in the bridesmaid group, and she's all freaking out because her social credit score has her in a certain high-level category, which is going to qualify to be at the wedding party. And suddenly things start going in reverse with her job, her car, her boyfriend, and her social credit score starts tumbling, and she's freaking out because her whole identity is wrapped up in the social almost like likes on Facebook, right?
Can I clarify just a little bit?
And then I want to know, Carl, did you see this episode?
Well, unless Carl wants to clarify. Have you seen that episode, Carl? Okay, so it's really interesting. Again, I don't advocate watching Black Mirror, but some of the content in that show, I think, really forecasts what they want to do with technology. So to your point, the social credit system is that, let's say I go buy a coffee from you. You rate me on that transaction. Did I smile at you? Did I tip you? Did I, you're giving me a score and I'm giving you a score on that transaction. So every interaction with everyone is scored.
It's like an Uber driver experience with everything in your life.
Exactly. No, it's exactly like that. Exactly. And so what ends up happening is she kind of has an outburst. I want to say it was like at a restaurant or something like that. So then all these people start rating her all around her and her score starts to drop. And at this wedding, you have to be like an 8 or higher to go to the wedding. And so her score drops, and then it becomes like a 7.
7.8.
Yeah, 7.8.
She's
And
got to
then
get
it's
it up. She's got to do something to get it up.
man, it starts cascading. Like, I'll tell you, the ending too is really just, it starts cascading down to the point where she can't even get on a airplane, and then she can't get on a bus. She gets down to like a 3. And then the only way she gets like to wherever she needs to go is like a truck driver picks her up at the end. And like she's hitchhiking. But the whole society is based on this social score. And to your point, China has a version of that out now where you're rating each other of, how are you doing? So anyways, that's the full episode, just so you don't have to go watch it now.
Did you see the episode by any chance, Carl?
Nope, not that one.
Okay.
But
Are there
I
any
saw-
other episodes that come to mind about social credit scores?
Yeah, there was this other one where, and it's been well over a year since I watched it, but it was basically like America's Got Talent or one of those talent shows, and the winner gets so many credits. And it's a good series, in my opinion. I know it is dark, but it was a bit like, it's kind of like our generation's version of The Twilight Zone, just under a different name.
Mm-hmm.
And in the credit score, it wasn't social credit. I think it was actual like monetary credits. But they end up doing these crazy, outlandish things in order to garner attention and then get more credits. And then they end up basically selling their soul in order to continue to have those credits. And so the gist of it, the idea behind it, I think, is that we will end up being less genuine, less authentic, less real with each other in order to maintain our social standing according to the AI and the technology.
Well, the point that I want to drive home is that Elon, with one statement, suddenly lit on fire Glenn Beck's 20 episodes he did on ESG, but the combined effect of all of us guys and gals out here that are hammering on this stuff is eventually it hits a tipping point. And now I want you to see the video clip where Glenn is describing what the environmental social governance score system means, because it used to be, when I went out to this billionaire business event and spoke at it in Indonesia some years ago, I remember the rage in the HR department was about, it was shareholder governance or something like that, which was what the shareholders were doing, because the theme was responsible stewardship in corporate governance, so that the company was reflecting what the shareholders want in terms of their values reflected in the transaction in the company. And then Glenn pointed out there is a shift in language, and every shift in language is meticulously detailed by the devil to reveal something else. And it's stakeholder capitalism, not shareholder capitalism. And that means the stakeholder is no longer you. It's the banks and the government that have a stake, like the Communist Party has a stake in what happens with your company, and you will toe the party line.
And I just want to clarify, when you say ESG, because I don't even think we stopped to explain what it was, but that is at a corporate level right now, not at a personal, individual level like what China's doing or like the show we were just talking about. This is at a corporate level when you're saying these companies are now going to be governed by environmental policy, social justice policy, and governance. And
yes, it's at the corporate level.
Okay.
However,
Yes.
however, it's at the personal level for anyone that wants to be in a corporate position. Because if you are not in compliance, if your Facebook posts, if your Twitter, if your profile, if you are not basically walking the party line, that word party line comes from the communist China Mao era. It was the party line is the line you need to line up with. If you're not literally living in the hypocrisy of suppressing your personal beliefs in order to have a career in Wall Street, then you won't be on the board, because they're looking for people that are going to espouse their woke agenda, which means they're going to want the homosexual on the board. They want the transgender on the board. They want the minority activists on the board. They want the gender. And you see it with Biden. He didn't say, I want to pick, and we know they do this politically. He didn't pick Kamala Harris because she was the sharpest knife in the drawer. Picked her because she was a demographic that would help him get elected. But then he goes on to appoint a Supreme Court justice, not on the basis of merit, but on the basis of gender and skin color. This is ESG values that basically will destroy the competitive strength of the United States if it's uninterrupted. But I do want to get to that Glenn Beck video.
I'm going to play it. Also, Carl had a comment as well. I just want to say, though, to your point, these are, I think was what you're saying, these are the new standards by which we will all be judged. And so even though it's at a corporate level now, this is what's coming for us in the future. And did you know that Biden?
No, because he gives the example of a bank, Merrill Lynch,
yes,
that has a score on an individual person.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you know he wants to consolidate the 3 credit unions into one government agency that's going to look at these types of things? Yeah. It's crazy. Anyways, Carl, what were you going to say?
So my question is, I know we don't, sorry, I need to hold it back. I know we don't know for sure what the long-reaching ramifications are of this, but how would the government judge companies like Tesla or even cryptocurrencies based on their environmental impact when they actually are long-term alleging that they're going to help save the environment, but in the short term, they're destroying the environment? So how can they even quantify or qualify where these metrics lie?
Yeah, I think my opinion is that liberal rules are kind of like, whose line is it anyway? The rules don't matter. No, they just don't. It's arbitrary. It applies generically to whatever they feel like it should at the moment. But that's my opinion. Lance, anything from you before I play this clip?
No, play the clip. Let's make sure everybody gets on board with this, because this is already, it's kind of like what worries me about the global reset stuff with Klaus Schwab and all this stuff, the digital dollar. What worries me is these guys are already moving in this direction, and by the time you find out about it, it's too late to change it. So, go ahead.
So they've come up with ESG, environmental, social justice, and governance. These scores will go all the way to you, which I'll show you in a minute. Environmental, energy, water, land. How much land do you have? Are you dedicating that to a preserve? How about water? What's your water usage? What's your energy usage? Are you using renewables? How many cars do you have? How much gas do you use? Environmental, E. That score will go down if you don't have a house that has solar panels, if you're a company that engages at all with dirty fuels. Social justice, how woke are you? Have you told your people to be less white? Are you anti-police? Is it okay to protest and march and burn down cities for BLM, but definitely not, because you are against the vaccine mandates? Then great, you're going to do great on social justice scores. And governance, your business. How many women do you employ? How many minorities? Who's on the board of directors? Here's the great thing. When it comes to stakeholder capitalism, it's not shareholder, it's not you. It's the stakeholders. It's the government, the governments of the world, the banks, and the businesses. But you know how they have a board of directors? Yeah, the government has what in ESG land is called a golden stake. So even after all of this, if the company says, yeah, but we're not going to do that, that's just not good for us, the golden stake can be driven through their heads by the government, and they will say, no, you are doing this. That's ESG. Now, that's the lever that they are using, as Janet Yellen just mentioned. ESG, environmental, social, and governance. Basically, if a bank or a company doesn't meet the standards of those 3 metrics, then they're giving a load grade that looks similar to a credit score. Credit doesn't matter. How are you on the environment? How are you with women's issues? What happens when you get a low or failing credit rating? Well, you're locked out because that's not the direction the world is going. And so you become a risk to the bank and to the community. So will this affect you? I want to show you something. We were recently given this screenshot from somebody that has assets at Merrill Lynch. They now have been assigned an ESG score of 4.7. Now imagine if you got an email from a bank or an insurance company, maybe even your employer, stating that your credit score had dropped to 470. Imagine what they could do to you. The framework is exactly the same, and it is being implemented at the very top. Much of the groundwork for the Great Reset was laid out back in 2015, but they lacked serious crisis to kick it into high gear. Can I ask you a question? Who's actually following the Paris Climate Agreement back in 2015? Because I wasn't. Usual junk, talk about it at the time, saving the planet from imminent, spontaneous fiery floods or whatever. The moment Donald Trump descended that escalator, pretty much all the media went attention in that direction. Paris Climate Accords. There was hardly any critical analysis on the scarcely disclosed side details. The Paris Agreement was crazy. We had to be in it. But it wasn't about cutting fossil fuels. It was really about the first half, finances. It was about the redistribution of wealth and permanently altering the global financial system. I want you to check this out in the fine print.
Wow, we're going to hold off on that. Check this out in fine print, because where he's going is really where we got to go on our next podcast, which is the nature of the reset, the nature of the global game that is being played. And you know what I resent? I resent the fact that it's such a blatant takeover by this privileged, elite, wealthy class of people that have a contempt for their own population, that think they're ignorant and need to be managed like cattle. And that for this reason, they'll tag you, vax you, supervise you, track you, monitor you, take your money from you, control your bank account, tell you what to eat, where to go, what to drive, what to do. It's people worried about Christians being in government and imposing their way of life on others. The reality is, this is the alternative. Into that vacuum is a Handmaid's Tale cocktail of every bizarre, extreme, elite, weird leftist fantasy that you could mix into a mixer and pour to the brain of a 22-year-old at a university, and then have them go out and try to implement to create a utopia in a world where steel-eyed thugs and dangerous people like the Communist Party in China, like Putin, are going to eat our lunch. They don't play by the same rules as our naive leftists do, who think they're going to create a utopia. And that's what we got to do to preserve America from what's coming at us. It's like a great white shark out there. The good news is, I can't go into there now, but the tide is turning because the truth is coming out. The reason why I wanted to open with the Hunter Biden laptop, and the reason why I wanted to talk about the Elon Musk getting involved with Twitter, the reason why I would have included the shocking tsunami win of Viktor Orban in Hungary, which was a vote for a conservative backlash against authoritarian Europe control. There is a growing backlash in America. There is a global pushback, and I think it's not being reflected in the news. I don't think you're hearing enough about it, even from us, because we're hovering like a helicopter over the worst sites and trying to redeem and find some encouragement for you. But the trend is we're hitting a 6 to 12-month period of global backlash against the elites. The damage from the vaccine, the Pfizer studies of what they knew about the dangers of these vaccines is coming out, and it's going to be red hot and inflaming. The report by Durham combined with the laptop, is going to expose the corruption in the Democratic Party. Meanwhile, your prices for gasoline have gone from $1.75 a year and a half ago to $7 right now. You don't think that this raging inferno of inflation, plus the hemorrhaging of our borders with a criminal onslaught from foreign countries, you don't think this is going to feed a backlash in November? I think God's basically bringing all the plagues on Egypt right now so as to create a sense of sanity in the American public to push back on what's happening. And there's only one thing you can really do, one practical thing that I want to encourage you to do while you're praying and while you're holding the line. And if there is going to be this 40 or 50% rise in fuel costs, and it's going to hit you in air conditioning expense and electric, if there's a 15 to 20% rise in food costs, and the shelves are going to start to become bare because fertilizer isn't coming out of the Ukraine, and the disrupted wheat supply of 30% of the global wheat supply is thrown off for bakers and for restaurants. If we're going to see this cross the board, you may not like tithing, but guess what? The government's taking its 10% from you by force because inflation's going to gouge 10% from all of your incomes. And the only hedge you've really got against that's historic for the last 1,000 years, is going to be to put the value of your dollars into something that can retain it. And that's going to be gold, and that's going to be silver, but it's a certain kind of gold and silver. You can't just have paper that's going to go like the Iraqi dinar, certificates I bought years ago. You need to actually have the right investment. And what I want you to do is I want you to get a hold of Birch Gold. Go to lancewallnut.com/Birch and connect with them. Connect with one of their consultants. Talk to somebody and get advice. And people say, well, I don't have that much. I don't have that much to invest. It starts with investing in your education. 2 years ago, I could give a rip about these things. Now, when I started reading Haggai, and I said, the silver is mine, the gold is mine, I started focusing on what I needed to do. I started getting educated. You start with learning. Then learning becomes a magnet to resources. It could be that you're going to talk to somebody else who has the resources, and you're going to help each other during the coming time. But you should be knowledgeable about what's happening. lancewallnut.com/Birch. Go there, download the report, talk to somebody about what you can do. And we're going to come back in a future broadcast because I've got good news for those of you that say, what can I do? I don't have money for Birch Gold, Lance. Well, there still is something developing for you, and we're watching it, but I can't announce it yet because we just found out about it yesterday, and I don't know if I'm under a non-disclosure, but I'll be leaking it out shortly because that's what I do. All right. It's Lance Wallnau Show. We're going to be signing off. I'm going to be coming back tomorrow with the hot story about the global trend of a awakening backlash against authoritarian elites, and it's happening and coming to a theater near you. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to this Lance Wallnau broadcast. If you enjoyed today's show, make sure to subscribe and share the episode. See you tomorrow.